That's right. Welcome back to the Puck Drop Podcast. I'm Cole, the NHL Music Man Chapman, and I'm here with Lieutenant Dangle D, Dustin Edgington.
He's like, what did I get myself into?
Let me get through these reads first, guys. And we're brought to you by Hockey Stops, obviously. Up in Ogden, Logan, I went and got skates from Corey the other day. The man is a magician with what he does with hockey skates and skate sharpening, repairs, all of that. So go check him out. Hockey Stops and obviously Bucked Up Energy. Cheers to Bucked Up Energy. You got a water?
I do. Thank you.
We're off of energy drinks lately.
They're bucked up.
Yeah.
They are. I drink like 3 sips and I'm like in the chair.
And to piggyback off of last week's episode, we are here with my dad, Tracy Chapman.
Yeah.
we gotta have a nickname. TC. TC's in the building.
My dad is, I've got the Music Man name. I gave it to myself, and there's a big reason because of that, and it's because of this man sitting next to us over here. He's been on the radio for 50 years next year.
50 years in September.
Yep, 50 years in September.
Can I call timeout?
Yeah.
Shout out Atlas Health and Life as well.
Yep.
There's a lot. It's a lot to take in. We got done going through the motions of what we just went through with audio, visual, whatever.
So my dad's been on the radio for 50 years, and so this is actually a special episode. After this 30 minutes airs of us interviewing him, we're going to play a mini documentary of my dad. He literally got pretty much the entire world to play one song at the exact same time. And if you're in your 45s, 50s, 50-year-olds.
Well, no, I'd say 30s.
You might remember this. It was in 1987.
I don't give a crap.
1985.
I'm going to talk over you gentlemen because you guys are radio voices. But if you know, you know. You could be 20 all the way up to know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Well,
legitimately.
I mean, there's a lot of things we're going to talk about. But so my dad got the entire world to play a Michael Jackson song, We Are the World. You might have heard of it. There's a documentary on Netflix about it. He got the entire world to play the We Are the World song by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. Yeah. I mean, you name it. There's every pop artist that's ever existed in that song. And it was for the
USA for Africa.
For the USA for Africa.
Oh, cool.
Back when the world did cool things to bring people together.
With that being said, shout out again for Aaron not being here because it's in Hawaii. But he went and drilled
he did
holes in Africa for water. So it's kind of a loophole of small circles, if you will.
So stay tuned. Stay tuned. There's going to be a mini documentary. This mini documentary was put together 5-6 years ago?
10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Actually 10. It'll be 10 in April because it was for the 30th anniversary.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And this is the 40th anniversary coming up on April 5th, Good Friday.
Good Friday.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And there's so much to talk about here.
How did you get into radio, let alone anything?
Let's
music,
start there.
Everything?
You want to start how I got into radio?
I mean, I've heard it, but Destin wants, and our viewers.
I got invited to go on a church outing with my cousins who lived in Syracuse at the time when I was living up in Mountain Green. As a kid, I was 12 years old, and we went to Channel 4 television, watched them do the news. Then we went to KCPX radio and sat in with the DJ. Then after that, we went midnight bowling. But while we were going in with the DJ, Skinny Johnny Mitchell at KCPX was the announcer. And we all went in, a group at a time, like 6 or 7 or 8 of us. And it was kind of like a restaurant booth. And he would slide us all in there. He gave us a speech going, all right, don't anybody talk. Don't anybody breathe. This microphone will pick up every stinking noise. And then he cracks the microphone and starts talking. I'm going, yeah, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And so anyway, we exited. Then I snuck back in and sat in again. And he looked at me like, hey, weren't you in the last one? And he gives the speech again. Don't anybody breathe. Don't anybody talk. And so from that point forward, I ate, slept, drank. I want to do radio. I want to do radio. Everybody I knew, every brother, every family member, everybody I ever talked to knew I wanted to grow up and do radio. And so a 3-year period went by where I would like make my own tapes on cassette or reel to reel. And my brother Robbie worked at a furniture store called Freight Outlet on Riverdale Road. It's not there anymore. It's all where all the movie theaters and Chick-fil-A and everything's at.
Okay.
Yeah.
But radio salesman named Fred Bond came in and said, "Come on, Robbie, buy some commercials." And he says, "I'll tell you what, my little brother wants to be on the radio worse than anything. Take him in, see how he does, see if he's got it. And if he's got it, hire him. If he doesn't, then I'll buy some radio advertising from him." So I get this call, and he took me down, and the first song I played was John Denver Rocky Mountain High. Hey. And I talked out of it. Classic. I talked out of it. And I was scared. This is a podcast, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was scared.
We're not talking around.
You're not live on the radio.
And so anyway, I caught the bug right then. And at that point right there, they hired me.
Awesome.
And I was working Sundays and Saturdays there.
16 years old?
15.
15?
My dad had to drive me to work every Saturday and Sunday. So I would work the Saturday, Sunday shifts, and I would do fill-in and stuff like that. Awesome. And I've been working ever since. I have only been off like brief periods of time, but pretty much been on the radio for 50 years in this market ever since.
I always joke about it with people. I'm like, we're not going to throw my dad a retirement party because he's never going to retire.
I'm not gonna retire. Why would I?
So we're going to throw him a 50-year party next year.
It's the best job, and it's the best. It's the best. I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to get what I get to do, and all the things that I get to do with it. And I mean, it spawned our sound business because I would get calls.
Wasatch Sound.
Yep,
Check
I would get calls at the radio station saying, "Hey, do you know anybody?" And I thought, gosh, I'm sure giving away a lot of that. And that sound business led to being my own recording studio where I edited music. And then that led to doing music for the Utah Jazz Dancers. And then that led to music, being the music guy for the Utah Jazz for 10 years, which then led to being the music guy for Utah Grizzlies for 5 more years.
We're going to get into all that. So
I love it. Yeah, we're done. I'm just teasing.
There's a lot more story to it.
I know. Well, yeah. And
so that's how I got into radio. So 12 years old, skinny Johnny Mitchell, and then
What radio station did you start on?
KSVN.
KSVN, and that was located in
on Riverdale Road. It's 7:30 a.m.
And that's by that was where they had that dealership that was like the Dome.
Yeah,
I remember that.
It was just a little bit further east than that.
Okay. Yeah. Those lights that are upside down that stood up.
Yeah. Sorry, honey, they said.
So you started at KSVN, and then let's go down the radio stations that you. I know KKAT is one of the
right. And for a brief period, I was off the radio, and I was up skiing with my friend Brian Shepard at Snow Basin, and I ran into a radio buddy that you'll probably recognize. His name was John Carter, and he was broadcasting live at Snow Basin. And I went up and I talked to him. I said, I used to be on the radio. I was off for a brief period. He goes, we're looking for some weekend help. So I got hired at KLO Radio after that. So I was at KLO for about 8 years. And then from there, I went to KZAN, which is a country station, which is where I did the We Are the World broadcast. Then after KZAN, I went to KDAB, which was B101. And then B101, I got picked up by KKAT, and I was there for 15 years.
So, let's paraphrase those, if you will. 101, the Arrow?
No, that was I was never on the Arrow.
Okay,
Arrow John Carter was on the Arrow for forever, but then
these all they all work together. They all know each other.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yes, everybody knows everybody.
I was talking to John Smith. John Smith?
He's on the Arrow right now. The morning guy.
I was talking to him the other day on Facebook.
And so from KDAB to KKAT, and then KKAT, I went to the Eagle, which was 15 years.
101.5, the Eagle.
Yep. Yeah. And then C104, which I started exactly 6 years ago right now.
Yep. Awesome. So if you know Dave and Deb in the morning.
Yep.
Well, and 101.5 is still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Or 103.5, excuse me.
Yeah, that's the era where John Smith's at. Yeah.
Yes, the classics.
Yeah.
103.5 is one of my favorites.
Yep.
For sure.
So
Granted, but I don't listen to much radio anymore, but at the end of the day.
Well, the funny thing is he's a classic rock
Well,
guy.
yeah,
Sure.
I can tell where you get it from. I'm over here trying to yell into the damn mic to try to talk. Anybody hear me? You guys do have the
But he's
voice.
been on country radio for the entirety, right?
90%. KDAB was a pop station. KLO was kind of a light favorites pop. But other than that, it's been country pretty much 90% of the time.
And we've met
love it.
everybody in the book.
Oh, I'm
you
sure.
name it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't know, but yeah. I get it.
I mean, back in the Utah Jazz, like we met Karl Malone. I still have that signed basketball. So
Got to know Karl Malone really well.
I
Been
think-
to his house a couple of times, and
didn't we go get we went and got his signature at like a buffet.
it was at that. But then we also did that thing at Flying J.
Yeah.
And that's how I got to know him, because I emceed it.
Yeah.
And he thought I was funny, and then he invited me to MC his Karl Malone Foundation for Kids, and that got to know him really well. Got to know him quite well.
Well, that's what
Did a
we
lot of
vaguely
stuff with him.
spoke. We vaguely spoke previously while we were setting up and whatnot, but I mean, I ran into Greg Ostertag at the zoo when I was like 10, and I was like, my dad's like, go over there and talk to him. And I'm like, you go talk to him. You know, like kind of I didn't know how it went.
I'll never
we ended
forget-
up getting a picture, and I don't know where that went, but we got to find it.
I'll never forget when Greg Ostertag drop kicked a basketball to the to the roof of the Delta Center.
I mean, when you're,
He got
6'9"
pissed off.
and full of
He got pissed off at something, and he grabbed that basketball and drop kicked it, and it down near went to the roof.
I'll just never forget the hook, dude.
Yeah.
It's just labeled Ostertag.
Yep.
That's him.
Yep.
So let's talk sports music. How, and I don't even know if I know, I've heard all of your stories probably a million times, but
I haven't.
I don't know if I've heard actually where like the Utah Jazz reached out to you. So let's hear that.
I want to know how this all came about.
The way that happened is I got to know the jazz dancer lady really well named Jan Whitaker. And so I was editing music for her.
For like dance competitions. drill team.
Stuff like that. And then they started asking me to edit music for the jazz dancer. So I would edit everything that they needed. They would tell me, the Jasper, I did everything for him. Everything for every noise that you heard, I would edit music for them, and then I would send it to them to use. And there was a guy named Robert Lund at the time that I knew quite well, and he was the music guy. And then he decided to retire, and they all came and met me at my studio in Woods Cross and said, would you be interested? I'm going, hell yeah. And so I had my first season, and we spent 10 seasons there. So it just sort of led from the music editing side of it, getting to know the right people, and meeting the right people, and then just one thing led to another, kind of the domino effect. But
Yeah, and fair enough. And like, so in regard to what we're doing, I mean, is it a similarity, or is it more of like did you put much legwork in, or did it just come to you?
it just sort of all happened. It just sort of.
And I mean, we put in the legwork no matter what, but it's still sort of happening.
The world
It's
is a
kinda
little bit different nowadays.
Yeah,
So-
that's kind of what I was getting to. Absolutely.
But it's called knowing what you're doing, being at the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, and never burning any bridges. I mean, even to this day, I don't think I've burned a bridge with the Utah Jazz or the Utah Grizzlies.
Are you sure about that? I think
Well, he might not feel about that, but maybe
that might
they
be
do.
why I can't get a call to do the music for the
It's
Utah
hard-
Hockey Club.
I've got different.
It's hard to say, but I think
I
that
don't know.
one day if they called and said, hey, would you be interested? I'd say we could figure something out with me and my boys.
But with that being said, too, though, now that you brought that up with your boys, Tyler, how did he get involved in the music? Is he
Tyler was my backup guy because he was the oldest. Cole was a little bit too young at
And
the
so
time.
I did a couple jazz games.
So hold on, two brothers?
We got three boys,
Three
Josh, Tyler, and Cole.
Josh
Never
never
heard
took
about Josh.
into music, so
No. Okay.
So what happened, the reason Tyler got into it is right before one of the jazz seasons started, we did all the practicing and had the preseason, and they practiced this opening ceremony on how the season was going to start. My appendix burst,
I
and I
remember
ended up
that.
in the hospital, and literally got checked out of the hospital and had to go to the Utah Jazz game and do it. They had the team doctor up in the booth with me in case I got sick to make sure I could still do the game. Once the game was over, I went home and I was in bed for quite a while because my appendix, I had just barely got out of the hospital. And my boss, Grant Harrison, said, all right, you're going to need a backup. I said, my boy Tyler, he was 17 or 18 at the time. And then he became my backup, and he would sit there and do it.
Kind of set up.
And then I got to the point where I could go on vacation and he would do it. Cole would come in and he would be there. I don't know if you ever got to do a game on your own. Did you?
I did a few like tip offs.
Yeah, stuff
you
like that.
Do like tip off the pregame tip off. And
So he was in the learning stage,
yeah.
a little bit younger than Tyler, and then it was towards the end of my career there. But the appendix bursting was why Tyler ended up becoming the backup for me there. And then from there, we ended up over at the Grizzlies. And I sort of told them that
Adrian Denny, shout out to Adrian Denny.
Yep, he's still with the Utah Hockey Club.
He's the play-by-play announcer for radio play-by-play.
Yeah. No, yeah. You were telling me about that. Yeah,
and awesome. They reached out to me. They came to the radio station and said, "Hey, we're interested in having you." I said, "Deal." And so I told them I wanted to incorporate my kids to where the point where I could only. We got to the point where we do every third game. So I'd do a game. Cole would do a game, Tyler would do a game, and then it got to the point where it was pretty much Cole's baby, and it was him, and I would let him do the music, and so I became his backup. And then it came to a kind of a screeching halt, which was fine. It lasted 5 years, and we.
But we're not giving up.
Hang on.
Hold on. We're not giving up on that either, though.
No. But somebody thought they could do it better,
right?
And that's why we got
the thought that they farted, but they their pants. So.
Yeah.
Somebody thought they could do it better, and everybody thinks they can do it better.
Well, and give everybody a damn shot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you guys
give
have
me
the
an
voice.
interview for
anything.
hell's sakes.
Yeah.
Holy.
But we had a good run. With the Jazz, I had a good
ain't
run.
over yet.
Got to know a lot of people, and you just never know. And again, that's called try not to burn too many bridges. And the guy that you said I told to, I suspect that he's probably not working there anymore. He was terrible at what he did.
No names.
We'll just sort of leave it out of that.
No names.
But I still know a lot of people from the Jazz, and I think that one day they it's hard to say what they call. I have no idea.
We'll send Mikkel this episode.
Yeah.
And you know what, though, like you're saying, though, I mean, with the way that we're navigating and with the experience that you guys have, I mean, why wouldn't you take a look? Yeah. At least an opportunity, right? I mean, yeah, you're going to have favorites. Maybe you know somebody in relations of relations of business,
sure.
Right? But at the end of the day, like, is it going to be worth it? Do you want to grow the business or do you want to make it better? Right. Why can't you have help? Why can't there be somebody gets strep throat? Where are you going to go?
Yeah,
alternatives.
Well, that's the thing about this Chapman team is
there's an option.
There's we have backups.
There's an option.
There's no and
maybe you ride the pine for a while and then you get your shot and then you just destroy it and then you end up on top. Who knows?
And just watching everybody complain about the music I'm just sitting back and I'm just waiting for that call.
And it's going to happen.
It's incredible.
I
how
really
many people
I genuinely feel like it. Yeah. No,
well, this is what I told Cole. The good news is you got time on your side because I didn't get hired by the Jazz till I was 50.
Yeah.
Fair enough. The better news is he's got a voice just like you, and I'd be sitting there trying to plug in like we just did. What do you need, brother?
No, see, he's got plenty of time. Time is on his side
for sure.
And we'll get that call one day.
It'll happen.
So there you go, guys. This is why I call myself the NHL Music Man because we've been doing this since. Forever. I mean, I looked up one of my
16 years ago.
It was it was over 10 years ago for sure. I think it was about 16 years ago.
Well, it was 16 years ago when I started Jazz.
Well, even being on the radio,
I think it was even longer than that.
Well, just being a radio.
My hockey playlist, I looked it up and it was 10 years ago.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, so it's been longer than that.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. So we've been doing the Chapman family's been doing sports music here in Utah for quite some time, and there you guys have it. Like we've got some people calling me out and like, oh, you're the NHL Music Man? You've never done music for the NHL. I'm like, well, I know what I'm doing, though.
Yeah. And honestly, I've known you for what? 15, 16 years? That's all he's done.
That's all I've ever done is music. So, and it's because of my dad. So
TC over here. Shout them out.
I mean, when I was like 6 years old, I remember my job at doing DJing high school dances.
He still does it.
And we still do it. My dad would give me a roll of duct tape. and and I would take the tape and go clean the speakers.
Oh yeah, get that dust.
That was my earliest memory of DJing high school dances.
Go take the duct tape and wipe out the dust.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Fair enough.
Been at it a long time. It's been fun.
It's been a long time.
Well, this has been fun. How long do we have? Because
So like we said earlier, we're gonna show you a mini documentary of what my dad did for basically the entire world. And he showed me this. He told me about this when I was like 22 years old.
With that being
said,
said,
why am I just barely hearing about this?
How much time do we have? Because I want to dive into something.
We're gonna dive into it
right now.
Go ahead.
How did you navigate and appropriate that?
You're about to hear it. So
that's what I want to know.
How did you video? But what happened is I was a truck driver. I was driving semi, and I was waiting to get unloaded. I think at Associated Foods, something like that, in Salt Lake, and I was in the sleeper waiting, and radio guy came on, and it was Wooly Waldron going, "Oh, here it is, USA for Africa." And it came on, and I'm going, holy smokes, what a great song. And I'm sitting here just listening to it. And as I'm driving, I thought to myself, God, wouldn't it be cool if all the radio stations here in Utah showed Unity and played it all at the same time? And then I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if all the radio stations in the United States showed Unity? And so I pulled my semi over on the side of the road. There was a payphone. I'm trying to think it was on South Temple, something like that. And I called my boss, Jim Mickelson, who I work with today at Z104. And I told him my day, and he goes, that's a good idea. And he says, come on down, let's talk about this. And so we just got together and talked about it. I give him full credit for executing it because everything had to do with get people in Chicago to agree to do it. We had a newspaper guy said, okay, if you can get somebody else to agree to it, there's a story there. And so we got somebody to agree, and he came down and did a Salt Lake Tribune story. And as quick as that story hit, the TV stations started picking it up. And I was on all the local stations. And then we started getting national newspapers and TV stations calling us. And there's a thing called the Associated Press at the time. And you'll see that on the video. And that's how people communicated back then. All the news stories came down on a teletype and printed out. But and you'll see on the thing once it happened.
Well, I want to hear it from you because all this is going to get edited. So I'd love to hear it from you first and foremost, and then they. But
it just picked up steam. And it was just the day it happened.
And this was all before the internet.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Spreading word back then.
Going through a map like
incredible.
And it steamrolled. And then when it happened, there were calls from, and you'll see on the video, there's radio stations in France and then stuff all over the world, and kids outside the Catholic Church in downtown New York sitting there holding on to each other. And I was getting calls from all over the world for interviews, and one of the final calls I got was to be on the Johnny Carson show.
Oh, no kidding.
And they were trying to throw the Johnny Carson show. They called my house, and I'm saying, how'd you get my number? The lady goes, I'm good at what I do. She goes, there's a limousine outside your house right now. I'm trying to throw this all together. If so, they will be taking you to Salt Lake Airport. You're going to fly, and you're going to be on Johnny Carson show tonight. And so I sat there on the phone, and they said, and they started asking me my waist size and what clothes and all the stuff. And then the reason I ended up not being there is because Johnny Carson would only do Monday through Thursday. He would never do a Friday show back then. He had that off. They couldn't find any more guests to be on. So like a musical guest, like if you watch the Tonight Show now with Jimmy Fallon, there's like 3 different people.
Right.
They couldn't line up any more people. And I said, I can do it Monday. They go, Monday the news story will be over. And so I was almost this close to being on the Johnny Carson show. The limo was there, and then all of a sudden I saw the limo start up and slowly pull away. But that was me almost being on the Johnny Carson show.
Oh, didn't Michael Jackson try calling you? Or
Lionel Richie, President Reagan tried to call because he was listening in Air Force One.
Yeah.
And so he was the president at the time.
This is real shit here, Dustin.
I'm just over here like.
But they couldn't get through on the phones because the phones were so jammed. But the lady who found my home phone, again, to this day, I have no idea how she found my home phone.
I mean, come on. How did we get Theo's phone number? I mean,
but it's just one of those things that just skyrocketed, and it was a big part of my career. And we agreed not to do anything until the 30th anniversary, which was that video that we shot. We said we're going to be silent about it. We're not going to try and beat our own drum. Right. Let's not get out there and go, look what we did. Look what we did. We stayed silent. Then we did a 30th anniversary story and told the whole story of how it happened. You'll see a lot of news footage of Dan Rather and stuff from all over the world. But it was fun to do. And again, that was now 10 years ago. So it's 40 years ago in April.
And congratulations. I mean, that's impressive. We want to do that. Like, we're here. We're not going anywhere.
The impact that this one movement made could have
changed the world.
Could have changed the world.
It did change the world.
Literally.
It had to have. Yeah. I mean, Michael Jackson is a beast. And I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy behind that, but no. I love Little Michael, so I'm not gonna lie.
No,
that dude changed the world.
It was great and it was fun, and it's part of history. And the cool thing is it'll be there long after I'm gone.
Yeah,
forever. Yep, awesome.
All right. Well, before we roll into that mini documentary, what's your last message here? Let's talk to the Utah Hockey Club.
Let's make this guy right here the NHL hockey guy, the music for the Utah Hockey Club. And the cool thing is we've got the studios. We can do all the editing. We can do the music. We've got the know-how. We can do it.
The will, the drive, the people. The man, the myths, and the legends.
And there's an art to it. So, and I learned it all from here. So there you guys have it. Now you know a little bit of my backstory and why I'm so passionate about music. And it stems from my dad here that's been doing music his entire, damn near his entire life. So stay tuned. We're about to play the mini documentary we've been talking about the We Are the World movement with Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, all that good things. Stay right there. You're going to want to watch this. It's literally history. And yeah, it's good entertainment.
One more thing. I love you like my youngest son.
And again, shout out to all the sponsors. Shout out to you coming out here and doing this. Appreciate you.
He would always embarrass me, like when I was like a single young chap. We'd be in front of girls and he'd be like, "Have you met my single son? Have you met my single son?"
Yeah,
Cole?
Now he's doing it to me.
All right, thanks, Dad. Love you.
Love you.
We'll see you guys next time. Stay tuned. We got more footage here.
Love it.
President Reagan heard it for the first time aboard Air Force One.
Used the proceeds to feed hundreds that are dying.
1,000 radio stations around the world and appeal for famine relief.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the way across the nation, USA for Africa, We Are the World on FM Country 98, KZAN.
On January 28, 1985, nearly 40 artists gathered together following the American Music Awards to record a famine relief song entitled We Are the World. As they entered the recording studio, a sign read, "Check your ego at the door." Artists like Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Kenny Rogers, Willie Nelson, and many others participated. On March 7th, it was released to record stores and radio stations for the public to hear for the first time. It was on that day that an idea was born, and two radio announcers from KZAN Radio in Ogden, Utah, launched an idea that became one of the biggest radio events in broadcast history. The worldwide simulcast of We Are the World. This is their story.
My name is Tracy Chapman. In 1985, I was a part-time radio announcer and full-time truck driver. I was a radio announcer for KZAN Radio in Ogden, Utah. 30 years ago, I came up with this idea, and this is kind of how the story goes for the idea. The song from USA for Africa, We Are the World, was released on March 7th to radio. And then the day they released it to radio, which I believe was March 7th, if my memory is correct, everybody was expecting it. We were listening for it. And as a truck driver at the time, I was delivering a load to Associated Foods. It was a weekday. I didn't have a radio shift till the weekend. The song comes on the radio. I'm laying in my sleeper of the semi-truck waiting for my load to be unloaded. And I was listening to the radio station Kiss to 97 in the afternoon, and Wooly Waldron was on the radio. And he says, here it is, the Anthem Relief song, We're the World, and then it started out. And so I laid there and I listened to it. And it's like a really 6 minutes and 22 seconds or something like that. And as I listened to it, I just, gosh, what a great song. And again, that was the day that it was released to all radio stations, so all radio stations started playing at the time. So I finished my load. I'm driving around, and my mind is just going 50,000 miles an hour of, gosh, what a great song. And I started to think about, wouldn't it be neat if the state of Utah, and we get just the radio stations from the state of Utah to unite together to show unity, to help raise money for the USA for Africa, if we could contact all the radio stations and see if maybe they would join us and play it and maybe get a little bit of attention for Utah. And as I'm driving along, I'm sitting here going, gosh, if we could get it to the state of Utah, why not see if we could get it to go all over the United States, dreaming really big. So at this time, hadn't talked to anybody about it. It was still in my mind. And it got to the point where I had to finally talk to somebody about it. And so I pulled my semi over. I was driving east on 3rd South. I can remember the place I was at. I remember the payphone that was there. And I called my program director, Jim Mickelson, Gentleman Jim, and I said, Jim, I have an idea. And his response every time I say I have an idea, he'd go, oh boy, because I'm an idea guy. I go, Jim, I'm an idea guy. But this time I go, Jim, I have an idea.
Hi, my name is Jim Mickelson. In 1985, I was the program director for a country music station, KZAN in Ogden, Salt Lake City. On March 7th, I remember getting a phone call from a part-time DJ at the time, Tracy Chapman. Tracy said, hey, Jim, I've got this idea. And I went, uh-oh. Tracy, yeah, he is the idea man, which means it's going to be more work for me. But he had a great idea. He said, you know what, why don't we organize the radio stations, not only in Salt Lake City, but maybe across the country to play We Are the World at the same time. Wouldn't that be awesome? At the time, there's a lot of publicity about We Are the World and what an awesome undertaking it was to get all that star power, all that pop music, including artists from the country world. Kenny Rogers, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings were involved. I said, you know, I think I paused on the phone for a while because I was thinking at the same time, you might be onto something here, Tracy. Let's get together, let's talk this over and see what we can do to maybe get something organized.
So the next morning, me and Jim plan our first meeting. I run my semi over to KZAN Studios, run upstairs, and me and Jim meet, and we start to discuss what's about to happen.
So Tracy, that's a great idea. Let me give you a little bit of a challenge. We're going to have a little hard time getting people to cooperate in this market. I mean, this was way before the age of consolidation and conglomeration. We were all pretty much
One
independently
station.
owned.
Yeah.
And, you know, competition is fierce, and the spirit of cooperation doesn't always lend itself well in that scenario. But I said, hey, why don't you see if you can get some newspaper coverage and maybe call some local radio stations and see what happens.
So I contacted a reporter from the Salt Lake Tribune, told him our idea, told him what we would like to do, and he says, I'm not going to print a story like that. That's just a radio station promotion. He says, who's going to be participating? I says, well, we don't have anybody yet, but with your newspaper article, maybe we can get some momentum and people will see it, and maybe we can get somebody. He goes, I'm not going to do that. That could just end up being a big flop, and then that'll be a bad thing for my newspaper editor to look at and go, why are you printing a story like that? So he told me, if you can get a local radio station and a national radio station to commit to what you would do, then he would run a story on it. So the first thing I did is I went to my favorite radio announcer, Tom Barberi. I pulled my semi up on South Temple, there across from Cathedral of the Madeleine. I walk in, he gets off the air at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I said to the receptionist, I would like to talk to Tom Barberi. And she says, whom shall I say is coming to see him? I go, Tracy Chapman, KZAN Radio. Now, I'm sitting here with the name of my truck driving company and my name, Tracy, on here, and she looks at me like, okay. And so she disappears and goes to the back and comes back now. What's this concerning? And I told her there's a thing that our radio station was going to be doing and that we would like Call Radio to participate in it. And then she disappears again. And she comes back and Tom Barberi comes into the lobby. And I told Tom who I was. Again, as a young radio announcer, he was always my favorite radio guy, the one I listened to a lot. And I admired him, so I wanted to go to him first. And so I told him what the idea was, and we were trying to gain some momentum, and we would love it if Call Radio and Tom Barberi would participate in this event. And so he's looking at me like, here's a semi out front of the thing, and here's the name of my trucking company, here's Tracy. And he goes, sure, I've got this guy in a semi-truck and a truck driving outfit saying he's from radio. I'll participate. We'll participate. We're on. I said, you're serious? He goes, yes. If you can get some momentum going, we're in. So I had Call Radio in. Now we needed a national radio station.
So I picked up the phone, called a couple of stations. I think I called Chicago, WQXI in Atlanta, and they said, yeah, interesting concept. We could probably work with that. Now, to rewind a little bit, when we were trying to organize this, we said, okay, what is the date we're going to do this?
Right.
We had to come up with a time before we started organizing. So we went ahead with that, and we got the we made the phone calls. We got the cooperation of at least a couple of radio stations. So we kind of knew that there was something afoot here. We had some teeth to work with.
So I called the Salt Lake Tribune back. And what's sad is I can't remember the reporter's name, because if I did, I'd give him full credit, because he's basically
30 years is a long time.
Right. And so he says, okay, we've got a story here. So the very next day, it was March 20th, it took to get the newspaper article to run. And the headline said, play it again, but this time simultaneously. And so the story ran, local radio announcer, local radio station has this idea to play the song nationwide. And then it gave the date, 6:30 p.m. on my local radio show. And so the newspaper article ran. And then the momentum started.
Started making more phone calls. We got to realize back then there was no email, there was no cell phones. Everything was either by, hardline telephone, and it was expensive back then before the telecom deregulation. Yep. So it was a major task, and there was interest there. We started getting the momentum. Unbeknownst to us, at the same time, there was another radio station in Georgia that was organizing a similar event, only a different time.
And so USA for Africa contacted us?
They were aware of both situations, said, hey, let's pool the resources together, guys. Let's not do two separate ones. Let's decide on a date, which happened to be April 5th, which was Good Friday, 1985, at 8:50 in the morning. Said, okay, why not? That sounds like a good time. At 10:50 Eastern time.
Right.
It was a perfect opportunity to combine our efforts, and then the momentum really picked up.
We got our first local story on TV. KSL Television did a quick blip.
There is another effort underway here in Utah to aid starving Ethiopians. Tracy Chapman, a disc jockey at KZAN, is spearheading a drive to get radio stations across the country to simultaneously play a fundraising record called We Are the World. The song was recorded by USA Africa, a coalition of some of the nation's finest pop musicians. Its proceeds are dedicated to buying food and medical supplies for Ethiopians. Chapman wants radio stations to play the song at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, April 6th.
And then the very next day, I get a call from a reporter named Allison Barlow. And she wanted to come to the radio station that night and film me and talk about the idea and talk about the time. And at the time, no internet, no
internet, no instant messaging, no Twitter,
telephone
no
calls.
Facebook, telephone.
So Allison Barlow comes and does the story, and that's the second story where it actually showed some video.
A local disc jockey is trying to focus more attention on Ethiopian drought victims. Allison Barlow reports on a mammoth effort that originated at an Ogden country radio station.
17 minutes away from 7 o'clock, Tracy Chapman program. It's a Saturday night. Mel Tillis on FM Country 98.
Baby, I'm crazy. Tracy Chapman is a weekend disc jockey for a local country radio station. During the week, he drives a truck. But Tracy had an idea that's caught on internationally.
I've always wanted to do something that would do something for radio, and I think this will. I think it'll I think it'll do something that has never been done, and it'll make us all feel good afterwards to say that we participated in something that was big and can grow even bigger.
His idea is to play the song "We Are the World" on every radio station around the world at the same time.
Thank you so much for joining me. The song that is going to be played all over the world coming up this coming Friday at 10 minutes to 9. This is USA for Africa, and We Are the World on FM Country 98.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one.
The music was written and performed by some of the nation's top vocal artists, and the money from the sales of the album is donated to feed hungry people in the United States and Ethiopia. The song is already rising to the top of music charts, but Tracy hopes a united effort by radio station will boost sales even further.
It says, let us realize that the change can only come when we stand together as one. And that's what they said in the song, and that's what I'm saying to the radio station. Stand together as one, just for 6 minutes and 22 seconds, and as quick as it's over, we'll go knocking heads again.
For Tracy, it's a dream that will only come true with worldwide support.
4 minutes after 7 o'clock, that is USA for Africa and We Are the World, an idea that started right here at KZAN. That song will be going all over the world simultaneously coming up this Friday at 10 minutes to 9 Salt Lake City time. It'll be 10:50 on the East Coast. Be listening for that. Hopefully it'll sound good. We want it to sound good. Appreciate all your help. If you'd like to donate
Allison
to that
Burlow,
cause,
Eyewitness
call us here at
News,
KZAN,
Ogden.
and we'll pass that in.
And after that story, we get calls nationally for television.
That's right. I got a call from CBS Morning News. Says, hey, can you come on the show the next day? So drove down to Salt Lake, went to the KSL TV studios for a national hookup.
Jim Mickelson. He's program director of radio station KZAN in Ogden, Utah. He joins us this morning from KSL TV in Salt Lake City. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Phyllis.
Tell us how many stations will participate in this simultaneous broadcast.
It's hard to really say, but approximately right now, close to 5,000, both across the U.S. and the world.
Including Voice of America.
Including Voice of America. They cooperated. I contacted them yesterday, and they said it was a go. That will be in their East Asia, South Asia, Thailand, and India portion broadcast.
Whose idea was this?
It was the idea of one of my weekend announcers. His name is Tracy Chapman. He's a truck driver by trade and a weekend disc jockey by hobby. It was his idea to unite the radio stations throughout the country, and with the cooperation of WROM in Rome, Georgia, Don Briscar and Bob Wolf, it has blossomed into an international effort.
What time will this take place?
The big event will take place this coming Friday at 10:50 Eastern Standard Time. That's 10 minutes to 11 a.m.
What do you hope to accomplish from this?
What we hope to accomplish, Phyllis, is to unite the radio industry for one thing, and to show that we really do care, and to in hopes of bringing to light, stirring enough emotions from people, wiring the world, so to speak, to bring to light that there is a problem of hunger both in Ethiopia and here in the United States.
Jim, has everyone been enthusiastic that you contacted?
Most everybody has been enthusiastic. We've had a lot of help from different markets throughout the country. They've been taking it upon themselves to contact people in their area, and that's what we've really counted on.
Jim Mickelson from Utah, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, Phyllis.
It's now 9 minutes before the hour. We'll be back.
So there's more people contacting us, more news outlets contacting us, lots of newspaper, other radio stations starting to call from other markets. And again, up until the day it happened, we thought that we had some pretty good momentum. There were some stories being ran. USA for Africa was behind it. And then, again, backing up a little bit, you started to be contacted by other outlets, by...
Well, Radio and Records was a national trade publication for radio, really got behind it and helped spread the word. So it really helped the momentum and the exposure for the event.
And so, Voice of America.
Yes, which we were lucky to have a local reporter that was aware of the story, local reporter for VOA here in Salt Lake City, that aired a national story, which was terrific.
And Muzak.
Yeah, even the elevator Elevator Music Company.
And I think they said it was either the first or second time a voice had ever been heard. So Muzak participated. And then the Armed Forces Radio Network. All these people started contacting us saying that they wanted to be involved and they were on. Again, people calling us, we started to make a list. Jim was keeping notes of everything that was about to happen. And then the morning gets there of the event. I showed up at, I want to say about 5:30 in the morning.
Were you nervous?
I was very nervous. and
excited.
And not knowing what was going on, because I think we talked the day before and said, do you think anybody's going to show up? Like, we were hoping that newspaper would show up, Standard Examiner, Salt Lake Tribune, Desert News. We didn't know if any TV. We didn't want to call ahead and say, hey, are you guys going to show up? We didn't want to be like that. You know, if they were showing up, great. If not, no harm, no foul. So I get there and Jim goes, have a seat. There's a lot of interviews to go, and I don't know how many lines we had at the time, but there were banks of calls, just go blink, 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 blink. He says, just answer them one at a time. You're going to be doing interviews for the next few hours. So from about 5:45 in the morning on, it was one radio station or newspaper. Sure. And I want to say they came from all over the world. There were a lot from the United States, a lot from the East Coast, Canada. And then there were some from overseas, and I remember people having to translate and talk about this thing. And so we're sitting there going, man, this thing is just massive, still not knowing how well we're going to do locally. And then the TV station started to show up.
We did call a lot of the local radio stations here asking for their cooperation, but since we were in this market, the spirit of cooperation was a little less cooperative, for lack of a better word. They were a little less eager to participate than some of the national efforts because it was easier. We weren't in their backyard. They didn't feel the pressure of the competition, and it's always, what are you guys, what do you got up your sleeve? It was always a ratings battle, but we said, hey, let's just put the ratings away for 6 minutes and 20 seconds and do some good.
And so we count down to the moment, and it gets there. And I remember Jim talking on the air like maybe 2 or 3 minutes before the event, just talking about all the radio stations, and again, calls were coming in. And we get to the countdown, and it just, the moment hit. And I remember Jim had it lined up on a reel-to-reel.
Yeah, we had a reel-to-reel because we didn't, back in the day, radio day in 1985, we had what was called a cart, which is an audio cartridge, and they were specific lengths, and one song fit on one. Didn't have one that was over 6 minutes,
I know.
So we had to put it on an open reel tape.
And I have that reel.
You do?
I found it.
Awesome.
So anyway, it's lined up. I do the countdown. We do the 5, 4, and I remember in my mind, like maybe the day before or so, talking to my dad, talking to brothers. I had this big, ladies and gentlemen, across the state of Utah, across the country, and all the way around the world. This is you. Anyway, I blew it.
You had your spiel.
I had my spiel, and I didn't do it. I can't remember exactly what I said.
3 seconds, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way across the nation, USA for Africa, we are the world on FM Country 98, KZAN.
Congratulations, Tracy.
I didn't get it out. I was too nervous.
You had 3 or 4 cameras.
And then the moment happened, and emotions took over, and there was silence, and then if I remember right, after maybe a few moments, the camera people, the newspaper people, all of the employees broke out in applause.
It was quite an event.
Yep. And so the phones kept ringing, and there were more interviews and more people talking. And we kept getting calls saying, you need to hang up all the phone, clear the lines. Lionel Richie's trying to get in. And so we would hurry and clear the lines, and the newspaper and the TV people were there waiting for Lionel Richie to try and get in. Then I remember one of the TV people saying, what if Ronald Reagan's trying to get in? We should stay here as well, because they had heard that Ronald Reagan had heard and listened to it and was impressed by the event. So they were staying there, and every time we pick up the phone, it was another radio station, and we would say, hey, can we do an interview a little bit later on? We're expecting. And we didn't have a hotline, I don't think, that anybody could have gotten through to. So we just had the lines. And so things mellowed out.
And I remember we just sort of had a chat, and then I think either you or John Webb, our owner at the time, said, we should all go to breakfast. And we all went, and all the employees, we went to breakfast and we talked about it. And from there, we went our separate ways and went home for the day. I got home, it was probably just before noon or something like that. And my home phone was going off the hook. And a few radio stations were trying to get through. They had found my number, and that was fine, I did it. But one particular call that was trying to get through was the Johnny Carson show. And this lady identified herself saying, I'm from the Johnny Carson show and I need to move really quick. We are going to try and get you to Burbank, California. Johnny Carson wants to have you on his show tonight. But we need to make sure we can get you here on time. And so I said, okay, I'm willing to come. And she says, I have a car on the way and it'll be picking you up here shortly. It should be in there in about 20 minutes. She had some things. She says, what size of clothes do you wear? And I'm going to have some stuff here in case what you bring won't be good enough to be on the Johnny Carson show. I told her the size, this and so then she said, how tall are you? Just going over all the things that they wanted to know. And she says, okay, the car's just about there. And in my mind, I remember the car pulling up in the front yard briefly. And then she says, we're not going to be able to get you here on time because what had delayed them is not the car. The car was there, is they were trying to arrange a very quick jet out of the airport that could get me there, and they just couldn't get it. So they said, our time window is there, so the Johnny Carson show is off. If we need you on Monday, we'll contact you. And so they didn't need me on Monday. But for my whole life, I thought, I almost made it.
Brush with greatness.
I almost made it to the Johnny Carson show. And so that was the afternoon. We started to wait for the news to hit. And the first news to hit was the local news. And all of them, it was the top story. So Channel 5, Channel 4, Channel 2.
As our Tama Allgood reports this afternoon, an Ogden radio station is credited with an international incident and a song heard round the world.
Tracy Chapman said the song sounded as though it were being sung to the whole world.
DJ said there were coast-to-coast goosebumps.
What was the count that you last heard of number of stations?
Well, it was an estimated count. I believe R&R came up with it. They suspected 5,000 or more.
Everybody stopped for 6 minutes.
Did it give you goosebumps?
It did.
And something that we didn't touch on, but part of that news story showed them going across the dial here locally. And 90% of all the radio stations participated.
It was great cooperation.
Yep.
I remember going home that night. It was probably early afternoon. I was exhausted, sitting down, had a big pillow chair. Just me. I wasn't married at the time. It's like, okay, let's turn on the news. I saw the NBC News with Tom Brokaw, and I went, wow.
1,000 radio stations around the world an appeal for famine relief. It happened at 10:50 Eastern Time this morning.
And then CBS with Dan Rather did a story.
Production in this century. Today, that burden was assumed by another piece of music. President Reagan heard it for the first time aboard Air Force One. Millions around the world heard it at the same instant. Heard, as Renee Ferguson reports, the sweet and rousing sound of charity.
And then ABC.
Probably heard the famine relief song, We Are the World. As ABC's Gary Shepard reports, it was a song heard round the world.
And so all the top national. Now remember, back then again, there was no Fox News, no CNN, no MSNBC. There was
three majors.
Yeah, there was the three majors. So it hit all the local news. It hit all the major national news. And after that point was over, again, my phone started ringing. Mostly it was family talking about it and saying, absolutely incredible. I just sat there going, I know. I am absolutely speechless. And I remember my dad saying, what you need to do is try and remember everything about this moment, everything from the beginning and everything, because in 30 years, you might want to retell the story. And so a little bit later, I called Jim, and we talked.
I mean, the whole impetus for this broadcast was, there are people dying in Ethiopia, in our own country. It was like, there's a reason for radio to get together, and we did it, and it did it. It was
And
great.
we just talked for a minute going, can you believe something that went from this to this, and here we are in this moment, and we got to be a part of it.
Helping people, which is what it's all about.
So 30 years. It was an incredible moment. And so anyway, 30 years ago, me and Jim shook hands and he said, congratulations to me. And so.
Congratulations, 30 years later.
So, what are we doing today? It's been 30 years, and as radio stations are, we move on. And from KZAN you went to?
KKAT, and from KZAN you went to KKAT.
Yeah, Jim
Followed each other around a little
Jim became program director of KKAT. It was a very successful country station for a long time. And he called me and said, how would you like to go full-time radio? So guess what? Got to park my semi.
That's right.
And I started my full-time radio career as the evening host at KKT Radio, and I spent 12 years there. We've worked together a couple of times since.
Yeah.
And what's amazing about is both of us is neither of us have left the market. We have both worked here locally. We have stayed in touch the entire time. Again, we've worked together a couple of times, but for part of it, we are at competing radio stations. And it has never influenced our friendship. It has always been a moment that has kept us close. Sometimes we're at Energy Solutions Arena or at USANA Amphitheater. As competitors. And we see each other, we go give each other a hug, and we chat and say hello. And then every year on April 5th or Good Friday, we made a pact to where we would talk to each other and say hello to each other no matter where we are. And it hasn't been hard because here we are 30 years later, still in Salt Lake City, still doing radio.
Jim, I've got an idea. And now I am at KSOP, which is Z104. I'm the APD over there, midday host, and program director of our classic country station, which is 1370. So still playing country music. We're both been in the country music industry for all these years. It's a great format, and we're still doing it, still going strong.
In my radio career, I spent a long time doing on-air. I switched over a little bit where I'm kind of two-fold down radio. I spend my days as a salesperson, going out making calls and selling radio advertising for 101.5 The Eagle.
You moved to the dark side, as we say.
Moved to the dark side in sales. And I also get to do evening radio. So each evening from 6 o'clock till midnight, I'm on the radio still. So here we are 30 years later.
Best of both worlds.
Still doing radio, still having fun, and still living the dream.
That's right. We're all competitors, but we all get along in this market. We really do.
Yep.
Maybe it wasn't the case in 1985, but on April 5th, it certainly was.
So 30 years later, sitting here thinking about it, could it be done again? You're thinking about what there is now. Back then, there was no social network.
No social media.
There was no email. No. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. There was nothing. And with all of the technology today, it would be simple to contact everybody. It would be in an instant we could contact everybody. But back in 1985, the moment was perfect. The song was perfect. The mood was perfect. Everything was aligned perfectly to make something like that come together.
Sure.
With no technology.
It was the biggest artists in the world at the time.
Right.
I don't know if that could possibly, it was attempted 10 years ago. Didn't really come off too well.
And then 5 years ago, they redid the song and they attempted to do it again and again, didn't come off too well. Now, I'm not saying it won't ever happen again.
It could.
The moment would have to be right. The song would have to be right. The mood would have to be right. And who knows? But at this point, it just hasn't happened again. And it was such a great moment and such a big moment in the history of radio. So 30 years ago, me and my best buddy and program director at the time launched this idea. I came up with the idea, and then gentleman Jim Mickelson organized and executed the plan flawlessly. And it is what it is. And then the third person in this scenario is radio. Radio came together as this powerful medium that it is.
That's what we got into radio for.
Yep. And the event happened 30 years ago, Good Friday, April 5th, 1985, 8:50 in the morning, Salt Lake City time.
There's a short we'll make it.